I speak about this a lot, but there's always a trade-off for everything that we do in the gym. Now, I think one of the easiest ways to look at your training programs is just thinking about structural balance, thinking about what's the opposite of what you're currently doing. Now, I always use the example of leg extensions. If I was to do 1,000 leg extensions, I'd probably want to do the same on the opposite side and do 1,000 hamstring curls. But if we look at that as the human body as a whole, that's how I really like to think about training programs in general. Splitting up the year into chunks, because you can't focus on everything at once. So a really logical way to look at this is you're gonna have periods where you wanna work in isolation. You wanna work on all the smaller muscle groups, often the neglected muscle groups that we don't use later on when we're working on performance. You wanna have periods of time where you work on balance from side to side. So unilateral work, single arm pressing, single arm rowing, single arm, single leg push, single leg hinge exercises, where you're working on creating that structural balance from left to right, because often even in these big lifts, we have an asymmetry. Then you want to have periods of time where you're actually pushing and using exercises to actually push up your performance, work on weak points, or just work on purely your strength output. So when we start to look at training, I think, just knowing that there's an opposite side. If I was to do 1,000 squats, you'd probably want to do 1,000 hinges. It's a really logical framework to start to look at how you approach your training programs. And if you're someone, for instance, that has run into like a bunch of injuries purely just from doing the same thing over and over and over again, I seriously encourage you to just take a month or two out of what you're currently doing, be a little bit less specific, and just get some structural balance and unilateral work in there, because a couple of months of really non-specific training actually can put you further forward long term, because you're not dealing with pain and setbacks and niggles time and time again.